opposition to the development, then, because if people thought it was a wetland, it should have been identified much earlier before development was, but then that's, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
We set up just to make sure that I'm right. We set up these, are called setbacks, but if somebody wants to build in, we go in and assess whether or not that delineation is part of a wetland or not.
Right, so the vegetative corridor is what's called in the code, and its width is based on the nature of the feature, whether it's permanent, if it's a stream, or intermittent, and if it's a wetland, it's 50 feet. And then there's also, you take into consideration the slope next to the feature, and so the buffer can increase if there's a significant slope right next to that feature, and its maximum extent is 200 feet. So in this case, there's not a slope directly adjacent to the wetlands, so it's kind of just this 50-foot. And as far as development within the buffer is permitted up to a certain amount, and for each square foot of impact, there has to be a square foot mitigation with native plantings. And that's a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you impact a square foot of property in the buffer, then you have to plant 2 square feet of enhanced native planting area, either right next to or as close to the resource as you can. And frequently, the quality of the vegetative corridor that's existing today isn't very good. It might have a lot of blackberries or other things next to it. And so normally there's a standard requirement to clear the blackberries or invasives and then establish a permanent planting of native species. Okay. And so it doesn't preclude the base use in the zone for what it's allowed, so if you're zoned single-family residential, as your principal use, you're allowed to do that, but it is an extra land use application review, and you've got to hire an expert to do the delineation and come up with a mitigation plan. And that's expensive, and it does take some time. So if you're planning to, just do a simple addition, it's suddenly not so simple because you've got a land use application involved, and that sort of thing. But it is I would say, the majority of applications that you see in Kenema either have historical review and a geologic hazard review and a natural resources review, or at least one of 2 of the overlays that are prevalent in the neighborhood. So in that sense, it's not unusual to go through those processes to build a new home in the Kenema district or even make an addition. That said, I can understand Karen's reaction to seeing this because of it's like, well, this is just this isolated wetland and I'm just this 4 properties involved and that sort of thing. And the cottage development itself is already approved, so they've got a right to develop within that, right up to the edge of that wetland without any vegetative corridor impacted application in that sense. So there'll be a lot more discussion about this, I understand, and we'll see where it goes.
It is lovely, when the little water does trickle down, it's lovely. Nobody would want to disturb that or build right up to it. I mean, we wouldn't have that kind of person in Oregon City. We just wouldn't. No.
Well, I think, and then, let's see, what are we waiting for on this? Okay, next step in this process, just so you guys know, is the city as an applicant has to meet with the neighborhood association to explain what we're going to do. And so the next meeting of the Kenema Neighborhood Association is in September.
Now, I have a problem, Pete, because I have a class reunion in Connecticut that has been long planned. So if you could postpone the September to the next meeting, that would help me a lot because I'd just be coming back.
Okay.
I think I can't remember if the meeting is September 17th or something like that, and I get in just
I don't have any control over what the neighborhood wants to put on its agenda, but if they say no come
It's a-
later, that's what
Okay.
we'll do.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
So yeah, check with the neighborhood association.
Yeah, I will, okay. Well, thank you very much. I
Thank you for
appreciate
coming.
your entertaining
Thank
my
you.
comments.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete.
You bet. Thanks for coming. I think our electronics are up now, so,
No, I messed up, see what I did?
there's something called.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, that's my screen.
Oh, I got your screen, how did I get your screen?
Because it's pretty.
So
There we go.
There we go.
my eyes are so messed up. Really. I'll just,
You have just the,
I'll website.
the,
You guys want to break for 5 minutes while we set this up?
Yeah, if you want to.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Take 5.
So let's see. Did it show anything? Yeah, okay.
That's the Heritage Tree Code Amendments.
Okay, so, yeah, let's dive into this. Last time we discussed some amendments, and I added a table for tree replacement, which is essentially the same table that we use for tree replacement from our development code. So I guess the question on the table is, do you think that is sufficient in terms of number of replanted trees? And then we also want to discuss, what to do, what to require or prescribe in terms of tree plantings and what level of protection, if any, to provide for any replanted trees. I don't have any good ideas at this point, but it seems like, those trees would not be eligible for heritage
Right.
status and they were immediately planted.
for 20 or 30 years
Right.
at least,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So it may but at the same time, yeah, I don't know. I think the nature of the removal of the original tree is going to result in, the covenant itself no longer really having any consequence.
Right.
So the cleanest thing would be for it just to go away.
Right.
And that would be the easiest to administer rather than trying to burden the property with, up to 15 new trees that you have to wait.
And if you're planting 12 trees
say,
to replace one tree,
Right.
yeah.
On a small
it's-
property
Yeah.
and
So I guess that would be my inclination, would be not
Yeah.
to try to continue to regulate trees
Yeah.
on that property once the
think you're
original
right. That would
heritage
be
tree.
because they're not heritage trees anymore.
Right, okay. And then the other thing was the discussion about what native heritage trees should be replaced with. So are there any comments about that? Oh, and then Nancy had a comment as well about the
It's just-
use of acronyms. And
Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
That's just a minor thing.
So PrAC,
And somewhere early up, like in the nomination review process,
Yeah.
in C, he talks about, NRC, and then it's going to go to Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, and then
yeah.
And then in I of that section, he says PrAC, and I just say, if you put PrAC after the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, everybody will know what
Then we
PrAC
get
is.
to use
I
it
would,
again.
I would also capitalize Natural Resources Committee in section C.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good catch too.
Oh, yeah, yep, okay.
Minor details.
Right.
I like when they're minor details.
Good.
So I would just throw out there the proposal that a heritage tree be replaced by native tree rather than open-ended heritage tree species, because it's kind of a loose definition. I mean, it includes,
What section are we on there?
well, this is on
It's got on E, native heritage trees that are removed shall be replaced with native tree species. Now, do we have none?
that's in E. Okay.
That's an E.
Yeah, that one's correct.
That one's correct.
Yeah.
What do we deal with non-native heritage trees? Is this in the code?
It says added in your.
Oh, I see,
to
yeah.
the-
So do we just want to strike the word native in the first part of the sentence?
Just say heritage trees that are removed shall be replaced with native tree species.
But do we want to do that?
Well, no.
I mean, there are some horticulturally very
Right,
valuable
right,
trees
yes,
that aren't
yeah.
native.
Absolutely.
That somebody might
what I
want
would
to plant
suggest
another one of
that-
those,
yeah.
so I wouldn't want to put that heritage trees have to be replaced with native trees.
Right, I
The
was-
native ones need to be replaced with native ones. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, I mean, somebody's gone through the effort to have it designated as a heritage tree. I would suggest a non-native heritage tree be replaced by a tree of the same species.
Yeah,
that would work.
That would be
Yeah.
a good one.
So add it as a new section.
Okay.
So that works if it's a native species, it'd be replaced by the same native
Right.
species.
Oh, yeah, that would work.
And,
So just so I get this correct.
So are you suggesting heritage trees that are replaced by a tree of the same species?
Same
And make it one section?
Yeah,
Yeah,
native or not, it should be replaced with the same species?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's easy.
I mean, if you want to make it a little more weaselly, you could just say the same species or a native species.
We could do that too,
That,
right?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
good.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
Yeah.
that covers all our bases, and we
Yeah.
don't end up with a new species that's going to be invasive.
What tree?
Yes.
What's a heritage
But it's a
tree?
heritage tree.
What if it was?
It can't be, it's not native, it's like, it's invasive up here. The only concern I have with that is if you have to plant, again, if you're planting 9 trees, do you have to plant 9 of that species? Because
Right.
in a lot of cases, you're
Right.
gonna have to probably do a mitigation, because, you know, on my plot, there's no way, if I had a heritage tree and took it down, there's no way I could find spots to put 9 trees.
Yeah,
And if my walnut was on there, I would have to plant
it seems.
15 trees.
Well, and they could be seedlings. I mean, does it designate a size class for the replacement trees?
That's the point. Normally they're minimum like 1.5 inch caliper tree, which is a pretty big.
That's in mitigation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of heritage tree replacement.
But if you plant 15 seedlings, only one of them's gonna be able to survive anyway.
That's the point, right? Because if you only plant one seedling, there's a good chance it won't survive. If you
Right,
plant
that's
15,
true.
there's a better chance one will survive.
If we treated it more like the natural resource overlay application stuff, you know, it requires a certain spacing and number of trees and shrubs, but I don't want to get too.
Now you're
in the
landscaping
weeds on
somebody's
that.
yard.
Right.
Pardon?
Now you're landscaping
Right.
somebody's
Yeah,
yard.
exactly. And we
Right.
don't want to do that.
I've got a question. In terms of a development, not with heritage trees, but I'm going to come back to it. If they have a tree in the building and outside the building envelope, they have to mitigate with how many trees?
Outside of building envelope is slightly fewer than is on this list.
I was
So it's like
suggesting
1 through
use
5.
that number.
Okay, yeah, so
Because
instead
what
of,
they're doing is removing, and use that number.
yeah, basically where this is 3 through 15, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is what it does.
So I would suggest we use the number we apply to developers when they're removing trees outside the
Outside the
outside of
envelope.
the envelope, and that, but even if you're planting several. so
Outside
we'll
the
survive.
envelope, this is the outside, yeah, this is the outside the envelope column.
Yeah,
Yeah, inside the building envelope is slightly less, because that's where they cannot avoid building.
yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to use that lesser number, we can just. do
Yeah,
that.
let's,
Yeah.
use 50.
Let people think about that.
Yeah.
And then that
yeah.
makes the same, and then.
You want to talk about tree stands?
Stands?
Yeah. The definition here, I just was wondering about this. I like that, except I'm wondering how you'd measure this.
What section?
It's second page.
We had a lot of discussion about that definition.
You know, tree stand means stand with 3 or more trees which together create a mutual canopy continuous over 80% of the area within the boundaries of the stand. What is the boundaries of the stand? To me, it would be within the drip zone established by the stand.
The drip line or drip zone is what I would assume too.
Yeah,
And just, a tree stand is 3 or more trees, but a heritage stand is 2 or more trees up above.
Right.
So
Conflict.
there's some kind of,
yeah, I didn't see that.
I looked at that first, I go, where are you getting the 3? And I go, oh,
Do you
there.
want to change
The 2 to
heritage
3?
to?
Yeah, heritage stand should
Yeah.
be 3 or more trees.
Yeah.
2 trees just on a stand.
But the operative issue for me is within the boundaries of the stand. How do you determine the boundaries of the stand? It should be the trees drip zone or something.
So it was a case of defining it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would change
I
boundaries
love it though.
to,
We fought hard for stands, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
and previously it was
We took a stand.
trees that were as close as 20 feet from one another were part of the stand, and they had to be at least that close in order to be considered. And we were like, well, how do you administer that? It would be easier to do a canopy analysis
Right.
based on aerial photos and things. Anyway, yeah.
Well, it does
so-
say they create a mutual canopy continuous over 80 or more % of the area.
Yeah.
But my question is, how do you determine the original boundary of the stand? That's my question. There must be something that defines the boundary, and to me, it would be the drip zone of the canopy. Obviously, has something to do with the stand. Otherwise, somebody has to identify the boundary of the stand, seems to me, but I don't know who does that.
Well,
Minor problem, love it though.
Well, does the drip zone seem reasonable to everybody?
yeah, that's normally the extent of the
So
outer,
it's, I think just
outer
putting that
leaves.
as a definition in there.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Drip zone,
Drip zone of the stand.
we may have to add a definition for drip zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can do that. Okay. Yeah, that's probably a worthy change.
You don't get to use footnotes in these kind of things, do you?
Well,
It makes it easier to use definition that way, but
yeah, no, I think with definitions, what they try to do is put all the definitions in one chapter, but in this case, we're dealing with a standalone chapter, so they really ought to belong in here. Yeah, we're not dealing with zoning or land division, so, yeah. Okay, so we'll add a definition for
It's great, it's got a lot of good
drip zone. and
word definitions, everything
Yeah.
is.
yeah.
All right.
The lawyer gets in there, he'd say, within the culturally acceptable and legacy period of the stand.
So, do you want me to bring it back one more time, or do you want me to just make those changes and then we'll take it to the planning commission? And then you can kind of come and present it to the planning commission? You'll see it again, but it's up to y'all. I don't mind.
I'm good with it.
Yeah,
Just
I am
going.
too. I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
They're making pretty minor changes
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send us a copy, but I don't think we have to have it at a meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the way we would do it is, planning commission would look at it, city commission would look at it. I think the last time we amended it, it was adopted by resolution, so it didn't require it didn't require, I can't remember if it required a public hearing or not, but it might. I'll have to check with the city attorney on that.
It's actually just making it a lot more clear.
Yeah.
And it actually puts the owners in as, property owners as you know.
Yeah, I think the difference between this and a development regulation is this is voluntary, you
Right.
know, and and that's even clearer now.
Right, and somebody can designate that tree on your property, but if you don't agree to it, it's not gonna happen, so.
Right, right. Yep. Okay, good.
Great.
Yeah, excellent.
All right, moving on to item number 5, new business and discussion items. The review of the NRC bylaws.
All right. So if, I did not, so what I didn't do is I didn't include the big 11 by 17 worksheet that we used to work off. Which, you know, if you want me to, I can bring that back and show you our last iteration of what that was. But what happened was in 2018 or at the end of 2018, as we were preparing to present the NRC's priorities to the city commission, we had kind of pulled out some of the priority activities and put them in one place. And that's kind of what this new planning sheet format looks like. I guess what this doesn't really reflect is a timeline, so we can talk about that. We don't have to try to complete activities within a 2-year biennium. That's just something that the city commission does. You know, so that's an open question that we don't have to do that. Certainly, some activities, they continue on and they are, you know, carried over to the next iteration of the work plan if they're ongoing activities. But I think what we ought to do is just go through these page by page and discuss them. Some of these, I went over this with Laura Turway, Community Development Director, and she said, you know, the city, NRC has actually accomplished some of these ones, and there's a couple that we can actually consider striking. And we can talk about that. So anyway, the first page is what our responsibilities and our bylaws are. And then you've got the city commission's current goals. I didn't include the entire, you know, all of the various sub-goals and policies that the city commission is concentrating on because I don't feel that they're helpful in terms of, you know, how they dovetail with the NRC's mission. You know, I think that there's 2 outstanding city commission goals that really govern what the NRC does, and that is goals 3 and 4, enhancing the livability of the community and pursuing opportunities to increase transparency and encourage citizen participation. And then, so, under our first responsibility as a committee to promote involvement in natural resources conservation, we've got 7 activities listed. First one is maintaining active communications with various committees, including the neighborhood associations, the Citizen Involvement Commission, and the business community. The NRC will promote programs such as the Heritage Pre-Program, Arbor Day, et cetera, through presentations to groups and boards. And then activities 2 and 3 and 4 are all pretty much related and could be combined into one because they're all having to do with
just did
heritage.
3.
And we just did 3, yep. So we could strike 3.
We could combine 2 and 3.
I was going to say if there's any kind of, I don't know, outreach campaign or communication that happens after we finish 3,
Right,
that could dovetail into number 2 there.
right. Strengthen and encourage
Yep.
participation through brochures and.
Or outreach to the neighborhood
Right,
associations.
I'm going to ask a question there. How long do you think it'll take for our heritage tree
Code.
to go through the process?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I wouldn't want to strike that before, in fact, the
Yeah.
city commission's actually
Right,
done it.
right.
Right,
Right.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
It could take a few months, Doug. You know, the city commission's got an active work session that's piled high with things right now. If we do things in an informal work session format before they, formally adopt it, which is usually their preference.
So I think we should hold it in there.
We just hold it in there.
Yeah,
Great.
maybe make it red or something to show that it's in
I can-
progress or something.
In progress, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Pending review and approval.
Yep.
Pending,
Yeah,
It's almost like we should combine 2 and 4. So 3 is the actual getting the nomination process over the line.
right,
And then 2 and 4 are promoting that.
yeah.
okay. Right, yeah, and 2 and 4 is a, that's a significant effort in itself.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And then on to 5. Assist and provide input on projects that improve connectivity between the Rossman landfill site, the end of the Oregon Trail Center, and the Cove and Willamette Rivers. And this is tied to its strategies in our adopted plans, which are listed here. We've applied for a grant to update the comprehensive plan, so all of this is kind of tied to that process. And it's the first part of the process is sort of a community visioning. And the next part of the process is actually how does that inform your land use regulations, comprehensive plan, and other policies. And whether or not we get the funding, we're going to be starting that process. It may be a little slower if we don't get the funding, but that's the idea. And we will, we need to decide, we haven't got a detailed scope of work yet. We wrote an initial scope of work, but when you get the funding from the state, they have you write a detailed scope of work, and they are part of that scope writing process because they want to make sure it meets all the statewide land use goals. So when that time comes, we would say how many blocks of the existing comprehensive plan do we want to consolidate, if any, or do we want to have a committee that looks at natural resources and drainage and things that are related to things like that, and then land use, and I don't know how it'll shake out yet. But the idea is that we target the broadest possible section of the population, not just, people that are normally involved. And that's going to be a challenge. And then we're going to rely on all of our committees in order to be able to act as ambassadors for the comprehensive plan update so that they can they understand the scope of work and they communicate with their neighborhoods, their neighbors about it and try to maximize the involvement. So that's going on.
Let me ask a question. We're still talking about 5, are we?
Yeah, sorry, I got off topic.
I don't know if the Parks and Recreation Committee have this kind of thing in their responsibility. But it's a connectivity issue, and I would think they should, given we've got parks in there and so
Right.
forth. I know that's not our responsibility, but maybe there should be some level of dialogue that they do the same thing. And maybe it has it, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll come back and see what theirs has. Do they have you guys have a work plan that you kind
I
of?
don't think we do have a work plan, but I'll
There aren't too many committees that have, work plans. The Historic Review Board does. The Planning Commission sort of does, but since those groups are decision-making bodies and they have kind of a mandate under the code to do certain things, it's a little bit different than what the advisory committees do. But yeah, that's a really good point.
Good to be on the radar anyway.
maybe the question should be, the Park Recreation Committee should have a work plan. I'll try to remember to bring this up at the next,
And would the intent be to improve connectivity with parks, with neighborhood
well,
parks?
the point is, we've got the we're talking about connectivity here, and we have the Cove and Willamette Rivers, and of course there are parks there. And there's also a trail master plan that's intended to make connections. I don't know
Right.
how that's advanced, but it seems to me that this is something that BRAC should be interested in. I'll bring it up at the next.
Yeah, the updating the trails and parks master
The
plan.
language talks about Willamette Rivers, Cove and Willamette Rivers. Are we talking about Cove, Clackamas, and Willamette Rivers? There is one Willamette River.
No, I think that's the implication is that it's both rivers and the cove.
Okay, because it
So
says.
your question should
Well,
that
you want to talk
include-
about the Clackamas? That's my question.
Yeah, that include the Clackamas River, because we got
Add that.
yeah.
Or just put rivers and take Willamette out.
Well, river, you can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Makes the cove sound like a river. We want it to be a river, but hasn't got that.
Well, I think this ties into,
Wipe out the development?
We want it to circulate vigorously.
so the other plans that would typically be affected by this type of policy is the transportation system plan, which has a trails component, and then the Parks and Rec and Trails master plans as well. Well, then both of those are considered ancillary documents to the comprehensive plan. Doesn't mean they get updated with the comprehensive plan because they are their own plans, but they're part of the comprehensive plan. Okay. Parks, Rec. So we'll keep this one and add some things to it.
The mission statement on page 1, first page, or wherever it is on your electronic, I like it really well, but it talks about advocating for an agenda. I'm wondering whether shall advocate, evaluate in advance. Do you have to have an agenda? The encouragement and all these other operative words. Some would say we have an agenda. I'm just wondering about the sensitivity of that statement. In concert with the city, committee shall advise, evaluate, and advance an agenda that empowers. I'm just wondering, shall advance the empowerment of citizens, businesses, and blank, blank, blank. It doesn't bother me if it doesn't bother anybody else. It just, some people say, well, you guys have an agenda. And we do.
To empower citizens, businesses, and government stakeholders.
It's a good mission statement, it
Yeah,
really is.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. It's up to you all. And I remember the discussion about the mission statement. The old mission statement was a little bit different. It was significantly different. So, and then, but, you know.
I'll leave it alone, no problem.
I think it's good.
Okay.
It is a very good statement, it just, that one word.
Sounds good. Okay, back to page 2, number 6. So let's see. Yeah, what do we want to do with this process? I think it's a really good idea.
Have you actually done it?
No.
Okay. Does naming happen very often? I remember my first meeting I went to, you guys were talking about naming some streams.
I have not done any further research since that discussion. So if this is something that we probably want to keep and come back to.
Yeah.
And keep working on the nuts and bolts and mechanics of it. Anything else on this one? Because I think Parks and Rec they're not mentioned in this one as well, but there's some potential cross-pollination that would need to occur if there's any parks that are affected.
There would be.
Okay. Number 7, pursue, so this one says pursue and advance habitat projects in and around the cove by seeking additional funding through the Superfund, blah, 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 in order to enhance the Clackamas Cove restoration. So this is tied to the restoration strategy for the cove development.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess what I might advise is that, you know, we could say, instead of pursue and advance, we can say support the pursuit and advancement of habitat projects, because I don't know when that's going to happen. And a lot of it is contingent on the Urban Renewal Commission when phase 3 of the cove gets underway, which we're not yet at phase 2, because phase 2 is the construction of the waterfront apartments, which hasn't been applied for yet.
What is phase 3?
And phase 3 is, maybe Jerry, you know, phase 3 is either going to be the, what's the area? Sorry. Well, to be honest, I can't. The phase 3 has to do with the peninsula and the north end, I think. And then phase 4 is the restoration portion, whenever that is. And so they have not identified a time for phase 4 yet. And that phasing would have to be approved through Planning Commission again. Because right now we've just got a master plan that anticipates phase 2.
I would believe it would be really desirable for us to have John Runyon come in and speak to us about the state of affairs right now, because a lot of things are in a state of flux, and we may lose out on these restoration opportunities. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Very, very shortly. There needs to be a master plan brought together for the sale of the mitigation credits to start occurring, and that's not happened. And if somebody doesn't invest in that, the monies are going to go to everybody else except Oregon City. I'm just throwing that out there, 'cause I know it's a serious issue. It'd be worth having an agenda item for next month.
Well, I think the agenda item probably ought to be a discussion with the Urban Renewal Authority, realistically, because they're the ones that would control that. So if the NRC is going to advocate for that, that would be the point to communicate at.
Bring it to Urban Renewal first.
Yeah. Pardon? Bring it here first, or what? What was it?
Okay.
Did you want to
But I
discuss
mean, we put it in there. I remember this when we were going through our work plan.
Yeah.
Because we felt it was important to keep that momentum.
Right.
Well, there is no momentum.
Right. No.
It's disappearing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know what's happening with phase 2, for example.
Right.
I know that they've got a extended master plan for that, but and we anticipated getting an application fairly soon, and I haven't seen it. So, okay. Part of this may be related to the fact that we don't have an economic development director hired, and that process is still going. And until we have that person hired, things are a little bit stalled. Lori Bell is our assistant economic development coordinator, so she's the go-to person in the meantime. I can talk to her about it and see where they're at and when their next meeting is. I don't know that we've had have you seen an urban renewal meeting advertised in some time? I don't think
Yeah, I think there was one.
Okay. All right. All right. In that case, we look to get on the agenda for the urban renewal and either speak during public comment or.
But, yeah, I would put us as another, it could be public comment, but we would get 5 minutes as opposed to 3.
Oh, I think you might. Yeah.
Yeah, but I could go under public comment, or it could be listed as
an
as a
item.
presentation of an item.
Right. Okay, so first step would be talk to John Runyon, talk to Lori, I'll talk to Lori Bell and see whether or not we can get those two to commit to a date of some kind. And that would be good. So we should put that on the future agenda items.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah, great.
Okay. All right. There are other grant opportunities available through Metro as well. They may not be as extensive as the Lower Harbor Trust Fund, but, you know, the Nature in the Neighborhoods, Habitat, and Capital Improvement grants are still available on a yearly cycle. So, anywhere in the city, as long as the city is, you know, a signatory to the project. And I think the stipulation on those is that they either have to be on land for which the city has an easement to it or city-owned. And they can't even be for acquisition by the city in some cases, but that's a significant amount of money. John Lewis mentioned that they're still working on the Scattering Canyon project.
Yes.
And potentially want to look at funding sources through Metro for that, so, over in the cemetery. All right, page 3, number 2, initiate recommendations and updates to the comp plan. So part 1 of this was with respect to the wetland inventory update, and this is definitely tied to funding. We don't know when we would have funding for this. Funding would have to come from a separate grant program, and we don't know what is available at this point. There's really no timeline associated with updating the wetland inventory at this point, but as we update the comprehensive plan, you know, we'll be able to get input from the Planning Commission and City Commission as to prioritization of that, because the comprehensive plan really is a powerful document. What I noticed that the 2004 comp plan did was people refer to it, I don't know, you know, they look at the goals and the policies and they go, wow, this is a good guiding document for which way the city wants to go. And a lot of those things come into the City Commission goals and priorities. And that's how a lot of things get prioritized as far as city funding goes. So I would hope that when we deal with goal 5, which is goal 5 and goals 5, 6, and 7 all have to do with cultural, natural, historical resources and natural hazards. So when we update those, we get an opportunity to prioritize things. Activity 2, which is to do with integrated pest management. This is something that the Parks and Public Works departments would need to be on board with. I know that just being a signatory to the IPM program is showing that you're willing to keep your staff up to date on the latest IPM techniques. I have not had a recent conversation with Parks or Public Works about that, but this is, and now we have Vance Walker, who replaced Martin Montalvo, who's our operations director. So it's probably something where Vance Walker would need to be involved as he directs all the crews that have the landscaping contracts on all the 1,300 sites that the city maintains. I know they're all trained in whatever the basic pesticide use and that sort of thing, but in terms of IPM, I just don't know how extensive their training is.
Isn't that item number 2 actually talking about 2 things? One is invasive species management, but then it refers to the integrated pest management program. What are you trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to accomplish? Support coordination strategies for invasive species and pest management? Because we're referring to an IPM process which doesn't involve itself at all with invasives, hardly at all.
Well, it does with getting rid of some.
Pardon?
It does with getting rid of the invasive
Well,
species.
that's true. I guess my question is the IPM program, well, it's a very good thing.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It needs to be a priority.
Yeah,
Yeah, when Bill Clark was on the committee, he said it would be a great thing to be, for the city to be a signatory to and participate in regularly.
right,
So we're not there yet.
right.
That's, that's where we need to go. And I don't know if anyone on the committee wants to, discuss that in further detail with Public Works, with John and that sort of thing. He's always open to that kind of discussion. John Lewis.
Well, I went to a meeting, I think, and Doug, you were going to be there, but I think there was a police action or something on Malala Avenue where a lady that really knows this subject inside and out, NCAT, National Center for Alternative Pesticides, which used to be kind of a radical organization, actually very focused now, was giving myself and about 5 other people, including Denise McGriff, one of our counselors, the concept of what the city could do versus what they're doing. And I don't know that they're not doing some of this thing anyway, but it almost seems like if 2 is turned around to support the establishment and coordination of an integrated pest management program within the city in cooperation with Clackamas County, that would include invasive species management. That's a different way of saying it.
Yeah,
Instead of invasive plants first, an entire strategy.
or maybe we need 2 things, because I think what you're saying, I think getting on the forefront of integrated pest
Yeah,
management is great.
exactly.
But we also need to do something like improve public outreach and information on invasive plants.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a huge
Yeah.
patch of tansy on Lynn Avenue as you go up. My daughter pointed it out. Look at the tansy. I'm like, wait, I'm the biologist. Why are you pointing this out to me? And I drove by going, it is a big patch of tansy.
Where?
On Lynn Avenue as you're going up, like,
In the park?
no, it's not in the park. It's on the very corner, the street corner. So it's like somebody's property. It's down from Charmin.
Yeah.
She's on
There's
Charmin.
that island in the middle, but then there's a
No.
steep hillside on there.
Yeah, it's that steep hillside on the right, and it's right
Oh,
at the
yeah.
base by the stop sign or whatever
Right.
that's, maybe it's a speed sign.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, blooming, just beautiful.
Well, that's the difficulty is like stuff on private property.
Right.
We don't really have a good enforcement mechanism for that. We've got some pretty outdated code language that says that you got to keep your blackberries to 6 inches high.
But you're Plymouth, so how about the
But when it
Plymouth?
talks about, integrated pest management and
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Then I can't pick those blackberries that are over the fence on Central Point Road.
Yeah, it's an unintended consequence.
But that's where the public information campaign that you were talking about,
Right.
Nancy, could help others begin to
Yeah.
address
right.
the issue if they
Right, because
understood
I
it was
think most people
important.
don't even know
Yeah.
that those,
Yeah, we
you
could
know,
send
you
a
shouldn't
box
have
of
to.
Stenenbar
Right,
moths there to
exactly.
that
Well,
house.
especially
I
when
had a neighbor who had a huge patch of it, and I kept walking by going, I'd pull them up, it's too dry and not gonna get the roots, and I walked by a couple of weeks later and the moths were there, there were just all these little larvae
Yeah,
eating it, I'm going, oh, good, they found them.
No, they're pulled up.
No, I didn't pull them
Oh,
up, because I
you-
couldn't, I tried to pull one up, it was so,
Yeah, it's tough.
it was so
Tough
dry,
stuff.
it was like, yeah,
Tough stuff, yeah.
it was like we had a summer where it
Yeah.
didn't rain, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we had that presentation from Sam Leininger with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and he explained, how they really go after the big problems first, and then a lot of other small
Right.
stuff just falls by the wayside.
It has to.
And so,
You
yeah,
can't- Yeah.
so.
But if there
that's-
was public outreach so that the citizens of Oregon City knew more that these are really serious problems and they should pull them up or mow them down even, weed
Yeah.
whack them. I mean, that would be
Yeah. Well, I think.
better than the seeds going everywhere.
I think that, Trail News is a good, Trail News comes out quarterly. And then we have the utility bills,
Right?
where we can put things in the utility bills as well. So that's sort of a pamphlet and article process. I don't believe we stuck anything in the Trail News about
Invasive species.
weeds or invasive species.
I'll pull the last one
so
out.
that's
I'm
a-
sure I threw it
that's
in my basket.
Right now's the time to do it.
Didn't glance at it.
Yeah,
Came out too.
Yeah,
and it just came out, yeah, so
yeah. I threw it in the basket. I'll go look and see if there's anything in there.
I don't think there is.
I don't think there is either, but.
So that's an important one, and planning can do that, but,
Well, I'm just gonna suggest, Jerry, if you have an alternative way of number two, I would suggest you write it up and send it in so we can take a look at it. I mean, you were suggesting some addition to it, and why don't you do that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, and then bring it in. and-
Changing two to support integrative
Yeah.
pest management, and
Yeah.
maybe have a three with the
Yeah,
the invasive
okay, I'll do
species,
that.
pull it out
Like,
separate.
bring them separate.
Yeah, I would separate those, because I
Yeah,
think the
yeah.
invasive species, you know, the public getting aware of invasive species and
Right.
that they should control them is separate from integrative pest management, but they're
Yeah,
both
okay,
important.
sure, I'll do that. Send it out to you guys to look at.
Cool.
so, number three, we have adopted a new annexation policy dealing with significant tree removal and grading. So when the Planning Commission, City Commission review annexations, there's a set of factors. And in order for an annexation to be approved, they have to consider the factors, but they don't have to be like exclusively all met. There has to be what's called a positive balance of factors, because an annexation is a highly discretionary decision, and you're changing your city boundary. You're basically saying that we have the ability to serve this area with public services without burdening existing residents. And that it's in compliance with our comprehensive plan and land use goals and those sorts of things. If significant tree removal or grading occurs on a property, and that comes up in the course of a public hearing about an annexation, then it's in the code now, and the city commission can consider it and decide what to do and add any conditions of approval to the annexation. You know, and then it remains a discretionary decision. So, I don't know what types of conditions they would typically add, you know, that sort of thing is not codified. They essentially end up being a back and forth between the prospective applicant for annexation and the city commission, you know, and they agree to that condition at the end, or they appeal that decision, you know. So that's in the code now. So at least with respect to the first part of this activity, we could strike it.
Okay.
As for a more detailed policy with respect to Goal 5 resources, which includes wetlands, streams, and those sorts of things, those things are protected under the code anyway. There's an overlay district in the county, and there's an overlay district in the city, so they're already protected in that sense. You can't, you know, just carve up a wetland.
I'm gonna bring back the item that upset me.
Yeah.
And that is I do think we have to come back with it, but the fact that the planning commission changed essentially the 200-foot buffer on the cove side to 50 feet. We never saw it, and the city, and apparently
Oh, yeah, that's on the next,
is it coming up?
yeah, that's coming up.
Okay, good.
So we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Number 4, consider and advise on code amendments as needed. So that's a pretty good one. So number 3, receive notice and comment on land use applications and projects within the city limits and the UGB. Activity 1, with respect to the upper yard site, in collaboration with the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, the thing that was pointed out to me was that the city commission has the final decision with respect to, you know, how the yard site is ultimately used. But and you know, so that's just an FYI, and
But we could still advise.
yeah.
Actually, the Parks and Recreation Committee has had passed a motion and reaffirmed it in the current year to have it made a park.
Good.
When did they do that, Doug?
They did it last year, and then some new members came in, and there was an attempt on our goals to remove that. I pointed out you can't remove that because we actually made a vote on it. You have to
Okay.
Vote on it, and so we voted on it and passed with a stronger majority than it was before because new members said came on.
Right.
So,
That happens.
Yeah, so that recommendation, I don't know, I assume somehow that recommendation is that the city commission is aware of it, but the discussion on how that land is used is, of course, something that's going to be dependent upon how the First Street property that they bought for public works is going to be dealt with and so on. But we only dealt with the upper yard. We weren't talking about the public works buildings and the parking lot down below. We were just talking about the upper yard.
This is the Waterford Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And now back to number 2, which was Enrod vegetative corridor width. So this would be a code amendment we would have to include, and I assume that would be part of implementation of a comprehensive plan update. So if code amendments come out of the comp plan update with respect to Goal 5 resources, that would be appropriate time to make that change as a legislative action. So you're talking about the threshold for when the city commission gets involved in that type of decision, right, Doug? And I just don't know that there's, and we have a type 3 process. It always says that, the planning commission has the authority to grant adjustments to the code. And the NROD is part of the code, and their decision can always be appealed to the city commission.
Yes,
But
I'd like to avoid that.
Right.
I mean, we're,
And the city commission can always call up a planning commission decision, which is
Right.
sort of this
Well, I mean-
prerogative that they have,
my recommendation is that we advocate for any reductions in the NROD to come to us before the planning
Yes.
commission hears it.
Yes.
I don't,
yeah.
I need
Yeah,
to be
no,
put in the
I
position where we
understand
appeal to the city commission, the planning commission's decision.
Appeal for something we should have
Oh,
done.
no, I'm not saying that. I thought your thrust was that the city commission would be the decision maker on this type of thing as opposed to.
I think that's a point of this discussion.
Okay.
But I think the city commission is a better one to make those decisions, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Because those overlays were established by the city commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The amazing thing to me is, I do know quite a bit about the code, code, COB. And moving the boundary from 150 to 50.
200 to 50.
250 was interesting, but in order to make anything work, the agencies are still going to require natural resource protections, and so I don't know that anything was accomplished by moving it from something that was very conservative to something very liberal. I don't get the thinking.
Well, I think what I meant was that the permanent tract, that the natural resource tract that is
Yes.
platted is 50 feet wide as opposed to 200 feet wide,
That's with the exception.
If it was 200 feet wide, it would have basically
Right.
pushed the entire development up to Agnes Road, which wouldn't leave much left.
Well, we wouldn't, I don't think our intentions were that.
No,
And I
the
think
intention
we
was
also
to
came
hear
to
how
record-
How the
I mean, the
decision
fact
came down.
of the matter, the way it was,
Yeah.
it wasn't a decent habitat. We would have wanted changes to occur.
Right.
And
They qualified a lot of the habitat as degraded or not of substantial value in some areas. But we asked the developer, I believe by letter or something in the last 6 months, to consider a native scheme clear up to,
Oh, yeah, they
They're
agreed.
willing to do that, so-
We appeared before the
and
committee.
all of that is even better when they see
Yeah.
mitigation funding
Yeah.
for the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well, I don't know.
But yes, I agree, we should be the ones that take a look at variances before they get established in the record.
Yeah, absolutely, and being as an NROD application, you would definitely be provided notice of it. I think, as usual, the difficulty is, does the notice period coincide with a regular NRC meeting so that you can form a consensus decision and have that entered into the record? That's the tricky part for this group, unless there's someone designated by the group as an ad hoc committee to act independently on behalf of the NRC, and make that kind of call. You know, neighborhood associations occasionally do this because they can't always meet
Right.
at the same time.
Since we do it on a monthly basis, it should not be
It
as
shouldn't be an
problematic.
issue,
It
right,
shouldn't be
it's-
as problematic for us.
But every once in a while, we don't have a meeting.
Plus, you've got a policy now that it recommends that the applicant talk to the NRC prior to any application. And that's on all our pre-application notes for natural resource applications, so it should be okay.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments on that one?
And has that been yet passed by the city commission? That's still,
That one has been adopted.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So that was July 3rd they adopted. It goes into effect August 2nd because it's a 30-day period.
So, to make sure I understand, under this change in the code, the 50-foot, 200 to 50-foot change would have come to us.
It would be an NROD application, whether it was type 2 or type 3.
So it would come to us. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that satisfies our needs, really. And when the planning commission hears it, if we have issues that
Yeah, and the planning
we have the
commission-
opportunity to put our recommendations in.
Yeah. Either, individually.
Well, the best thing to do is have it from the Natural Resource Committee
No,
itself.
I agree.
Because once you do that, you're permitted more time to speak.
Yeah.
If I did make a presentation on this issue, but I didn't really have the clearance of the Natural Resource Committee to make the presentation, so I had to do it within 3 minutes as a citizen. And so it's important that the designated speaker, which is normally the chair, I don't think it has to be, but the designated speaker with the approval of the Natural Resource Committee, make a presentation.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
That's a way to do it.
Yeah.
If you make a decision during any one of your meetings that somebody should go and speak on a particular issue, then they can go do that.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it carries more weight as an advisory committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be better, because, they'll pay more attention to an advisory committee than just a
I was gonna
person.
say also,
That was
if
a-
5 of us come and make individual statements, and that's 15 minutes.
That's true.
That's right.
The moment you say, I'm speaking as an individual,
Right,
but
right.
also
You
on the
get
NRC,
the 5 and the rest of us get.
Oh, there you go, yeah.
So it's even more.
17.
You'll be like,
These guys again. Dog pile.
you're not going to say the same thing as that bunch.
Come up with different points if we do it.
Yeah, we have to coordinate much better.
Okay. All right. Page 5, responsibility number 4, conduct orderly meetings that result in good communications. Right now, we have the one activity, maintaining and updating the list of priorities and activities to share with the planning commission and city commission.
Yeah,
We're doing pretty good on that.
All right.
that's easy.
And then the very last one, we don't actually have an activity for yet. which is coordinating with PrAC and planning and city commissions on at least an annual basis that results in good communication and mutually beneficial results, which is kind of self-explanatory. But is there anything else that you want to add to ensure that happens?
Have a barbecue or a picnic or breakfast
like
or, you know, some social get together rather than a meeting.
That'd be fun.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Social event.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of brew pubs to go to.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm going to that too.
We could all,
We can all go pick weeds.
that's mitigation.
That'll be popular.
Okay. Good. So I would say, yeah, one thing that we should probably take advantage of is our communications coordinator, Kristen Brown. She's been with the city 2 years now, and so they funded that position because various departments have said, you know, we need this position. And I think committees did too. You know, they were like, you need one point of contact so that you can be consistent with what you're telling everybody. And she's really good with coordinating with the CIC and Nextdoor and posting on Facebook and that sort of thing. So her social media savvy is, you know, much better than most typical staff members and that sort of. But there's an opportunity there to utilize her without cutting into your budget. Your budget, by the way, I found this out, is part of the $1,800 that's allocated to the 5 committees that the planning department uses every year, including the planning commission. So we have $350 a year, just so you know.
Okay.
And if we want to augment that somehow, you know, we have to think about
this. Is to do what?
Good question. How do we want to spend that $350?
We were originally talking about as part of the Heritage Tree thing when,
Right.
for bringing
That's
in.
right.
For brochures and stuff once we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we were talking about doing it to bring in an arborist to
Oh,
evaluate.
right,
And that we're trying to work out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I think with the arborist thing, you know, I think it sort of remains a discretionary thing that the city commission could require at the end after the NRC has made their recommendation, potentially. So it's not something we need to incur, it's an expense. And we could use that money for something else. But I think outreach and brochures is probably the best thing.
Yeah.
And,
For the heritage tree, maybe for invasive species.
yeah, utility billing about invasive species
Yeah.
and trail news. Trail news doesn't cost anything, you know, that's a
Right.
nice thing, but putting things in utility bills does incur some printing
the
costs.
thing is, Trail News has so much in it.
That's true.
It
Gets lost.
I've seen other cities that have something far smaller and more readable, and everything is in the Trail News.
Yeah.
So if we were to do something, I would suggest, I don't know what the cost would be, but
Yeah.
to actually do something that focused on something so that,
Kristen told me that they did a survey of people and how they access news about the city, and 80% of them said Facebook.
yeah.
And then, so the way that they boost news articles in Facebook, you can pay like $20 or $30 to boost your post, which she does. And she's always asking, do you want to pay $20 or $30 to boost your post for whatever, your survey or your comp plan update or something like that?
Get the heritage
So-
tree thing done.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
Yes.
put something in Facebook
That's
and
right.
Right.
spend
Yeah.
$20 to $30 of our money to,
Yeah. And so that's probably what I would do, in addition to the trail news.
And then, and the utility bill, I know, most people get a bill on there just because they got a bill on it. They don't want to see any of that other crap.
I have to be really bored when I'm paying bills to actually read those.
That's right. So,
So usually they go on the floor with everything else going in the recycling bin.
And I'm paperless, so I don't even read the PDF.
Yeah.
There is one.
Well, yeah, I agree, and we're supposed to be moving towards that, so
Yeah.
Facebook is
Yeah.
the way to go. Okay. All right, great.
All right, should we move on to communications?
Sure. 1 second. Gotta click the agenda ahead here. Oh, come on. Oh. Did not do that. There it is. Okay, communications. So let's see. And do you want to do NRC members first, and then I'll circle back with you?
Sure. Jerry?
I mentioned this early on. I don't know what the status of this whole thing. There is a swale, 300 feet long by 10 feet wide. That's 3,000 square feet. That's right in front of Edgewater Phase 1. That's apparently the city's responsibility.
No, what you don't.
All right. And I think you looked into it and found out it was somehow in the purview of Public Works or something.
Public Works requires that be
Right.
cleaned up.
Okay,
Yeah.
last summer about this time, the entire landscape on Main Street next to the cove was just overrun with weeds, bad. I mean, and it was a lot of expensive native plant material.
Yeah.
And I kind of brought that to raise the storm about it a little bit, I'll be honest with you. How can you let this happen before your dedication to Phase 1 is going to occur? And it wasn't that was the developer's responsibility. And they came in and cleaned it all up. But they can't touch this area because it's an NROD requirement. And it's full of the same kind of things we planted up at the Environmental Learning Center. Wild strawberry, reeds of different types and so forth. And it's just becoming a jungle of overgrowth. And it's sad to see it go away because it's very expensive. I mean, it's probably worth $20,000.
Is that still
Ever.
like that?
Pardon?
Did it get cleaned up?
It's not cleaned up.
No, it's not.
Nobody's touched it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can do that with my youth, but I have to have somebody tell me something. I don't really want to do it with my youth. I'd rather see the right department take care of it.
Yeah.
But
Well, there's two things that are supposed to govern there. One is the performance bond that's for 2 years after development is approved.
Right.
And then the other part is the ongoing maintenance covenant that they have that says that the city has the right to inspect and require that it be cleaned up, but it doesn't sound like that's happening. So I think I did notify Josh Wheeler, who's our development services engineer.
I'd be glad to send you pictures. I'll send them to all of you if you want. I had a photograph because it's just a sad,
I think he's.
to have the whole development on that side looking pretty good and then have that in such a state of neglect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll follow through on that. So let's see. So the city commission has adopted our equitable housing and development code amendments, including the natural resources and tree protection code and stuff. So that's in the code. It will be effective August 2nd. There are some outstanding items that are not natural resources related, but they have to do with food carts, building heights in the downtown, and a couple of other items. Locations of homeless shelters and definitions of homeless shelters and how those should be regulated and whether they should be reviewed through a conditional use process or just like any other type of land use through a standard type 2 review. So those things are outstanding. Meanwhile, the state has House Bill 2001, which mandates that you are required to permit duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes in any area that allows single-family detached. So, we spent 2 years working on this locally.
Now the state, now the state,
Now the state-
the state found out what you were doing and decided to do it themselves.
You're like,
You're gonna do this.
I mean, we would have had to go through a significant public process to adopt it, and we did. I think the difference between that and what the state requires and what the city adopted is how it affects low-density residential districts, and that particularly the duplex and triplex and fourplex. So that is a significant chunk of the zoning in Oregon City, and while we did adopt code to allow corner lot duplexes, it didn't require that duplexes be permitted everywhere on every lot that's a single-family detached lot. So that's something we would have to reopen the code and adopt and tweak. Obviously there's an impact to that. You get higher density within the urban growth boundary, which is what we are promoting, but at the same time, there's impacts to roads, there's impacts to infrastructure, needs for parks, and a need for natural resources protections as well. So,
Well, some of the things, like detached dwelling units and so forth, you modified the SDC requirements, have you not, on those?
There's some SDC requirements already for duplexes and apartments. The new unit types, single-family attached townhomes, we have an SDC for that. So I anticipate that the Public Works Department would basically use the same one for us.
Well, I was talking about the ancillary dwelling units.
Oh, ADUs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same as an apartment unit. The SDC is the same as for an apartment unit currently. Yeah. There had been some discussion about looking at the SDC structure to see if it was scalable by unit size and that sort of thing, but there's been no movement in that regard. Yeah.
That's a system development charge that all developers pay to deal with their impact on the infrastructure. And so there's systems development charges for streets, for parks, for various things.
Sewer, stormwater, water connection, parks, and transportation. And for a typical single-family home, that's currently $24,000, which is in the median for most cities in this area. And then for an apartment, it's $16,000. Now, we just learned that Tri-City Sewer has upped their rate and doubled it for commercial development. So that's going to be significant as well, because we're just collecting that and passing along to Tri-City Sewers for all the building permits. And that's what we've been involved in. Let's see, field trip to the Willamette Riverwalk site. That was really fun. I think we all got a lot out of it.
That was great. I've lived in the city for almost over 40 years, and I have never seen the falls up above the dam. I was just so impressed. And I think it's so cool that that's going to be open to the public within a few years, and everybody can get that view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was just really magnificent.
It was great, and it was really nice to have Brian Vaughn there.
Yeah.
Talking about habitat. I think that, Metro's itching to get this project out of the ground.
Yeah.
They really, really want to start.
I really wanted to too.
I did too. So hopefully we'll get our permits from the Corps here soon, and then, we can get to construction plan completion. And then that's as much as I know. The whole Grand Ron acquisition thing is completely a private thing that we don't know about. I'm not commenting on that. It's a due diligence
Is the
period.
committee aware of a hearing at the Museum of the Oregon Territory on the 25th this month, I believe it is, to look at the Grand Ron's request to have a DEQ, how do I say this, variance process established so that the mitigation requirements within the site do you know about this? I'll send it to you, I'll send it to all of you, I just got a hold of it, and, it's very interesting, because Grand Run approached DEQ and the state about a process to, when they develop within the footprint of the mill with 20-some acres, whatever, do they have to be responsible for contamination and so forth? And DEQ is saying, no, you don't, if you do certain things. And and there's gonna be a public hearing. I'm not even saying it's a bad idea, because it might open up new possibilities for
Right.
somebody that nobody else had apparently thought of.
And
I'll send it to you,
Yeah,
all of you.
yeah, do please.
Yeah.
And the other thing was a presentation last night from Oregon Department of Transportation to the City Commission about the Abernathy Bridge widening process and what that will entail and how the construction will happen. It's not funded yet, but they're doing a lot of engineering. The idea is that they use the existing bridge support, which is actually on the bed of the river, to accommodate the extra lanes. It's supposed to go from 2019 through 2024. And it'll be
Traffic's not
very
bad enough now.
pretty extensive reworking of the on-ramps and off-ramps on both sides. And it'll affect John Storm Park. They're actually going to build this cover over the top of the boat marina so that it's for safety. They're still in the planning stages for that.
And they will have impact on Abernathy Creek coal coming
That's
out.
exactly
So,
it, right.
So,
Yeah. Apparently,
the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife is involved in that piece.
Good.
What I don't know is whether they do a full EIS or are they going for an environmental assessment? And that question didn't come up last night. I don't know. What they were talking about was the sound wall barriers on the West Lynn side and Oregon City. The comment from the commission was, we've got close to, another 400 to 600 units going in adjacent to the code that could potentially be affected by the construction and the sound from that widening project. And they're not going to get a say if those units aren't built because they only look at people who are living there now. So there was a concern. Anyway, so that's going on. Apparently, this would be probably the last widening project ever, given the soil stability of the Willamette River. But they just said, never say never, but we don't anticipate because it's prone to liquefaction.
Every bridge in Portland.
Yeah.
They keep retrofitting the bridges. And
know.
it's like they're all gonna go because they're all on liquefying stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
So I think it's going to be important.
don't be on a bridge during the earthquake.
That local, I think it's important that people really get the comments in early on that and talk about multimodal and what's going to be done about bike and pedestrian connections and everything else.
Yeah,
So when the public comment
I'd be
period,
curious to know whether the Arch Bridge is tied to basalt.
the Arch Bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That one will still be there, hopefully.
yeah, on both ends.
Yeah,
All
The way
right,
to do it.
much better, yeah.
and I don't have much more than that. Sorry. Thanks.
Nancy?
I don't have anything. I was gonna talk about the field trip, so,
Yeah, so, there's still going to be ongoing opportunities for field trips. We were lucky to get out there while the dam was open.
Right.
Because it's closed now. So if you have folks that are interested, just contact Melanie Reiner directly. And we can try to organize a second tour sometime.
Cool.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, any weekends preferable, so.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I just happen to be off for the
Some of us,
summer, so,
yeah,
it's like,
some of us
we're
work.
not working that day. I have to go on a field trip.
Okay, so
Doug?
future.
A couple of things in the Natural Resource Committee. The Public Works has worked out agreement with us that they are required to deal with increasing shade trees along Abernathy Creek.
Right.
And they do not want to they don't want to work outside the city. They don't want people in the rural areas to be upset by Oregon City vehicles coming down there and so forth. And so we are getting $5,000 per year to work on these shading projects where we can identify willing landowners to do it. That's tricky. But we have had herbicide treatments to take down invasives and so forth on 3 properties along Abernathy Creek that are outside the city, and we'll have to do that next year, and probably it might be the year that next year or the year after that we'll be actually getting shade trees on those properties. There's also the possibility of further up Abernathy Creek, some properties. There was a 2007 flood that came through Abernathy Creek, actually destroyed some houses. It's very prone to flashiness, and the creek overflowed the whole dam and was very deep in certain areas. And so three properties were bought out by willing sellers to FEMA, and we may be working, including those in that particular effort.
Good.
The other thing is that on Upper Abernathy Creek, and this is as everybody know where Monopole Dam is on NRC Road. Turns out there's a forestry group that owns a substantial land both on Upper Abernathy Creek and across the ridge into Clear Creek watersheds. They're very stewardship oriented, and we'll be working with them in terms of I'll be getting woody material into the streams that their property's on, but they do also give small grants out, and we'll be pursuing that on the upper portion of Abernathy Creek.
Excellent.
And so those are the things that within Abernathy Creek that are going in. I think I mentioned it before, but we're also part of the partnership that involves North Clackamas Watershed Council, Johnson Creek Watershed Council, and then the Clackamas Basin Watershed Council. And I mentioned the application that we succeeded in getting through with some major efforts on our part to get 6-year funding from the Oregon Water Enhancement Board, OWEB, for a 6-year project. And we put together, it's phased in terms of putting projects forward. That's within a 2-year period. We have 2, and we're going into the first request, so ours will be coming in for money. One is we're already funding a project on Upper Abernathy Creek, which is a rapid assessment of Upper Abernathy Creek, and based on that, then we'll be looking then for funds to go ahead and do some restoration work or whatever needs to be done in that particular area using the Oregon Water, the OWEB funds that we're getting. And also we're going to be, with Metro, going to be involved in getting woody material onto Lower Newell Creek from its confluence with Abernathy Creek and up to the culvert where it comes up through Highway 217. So those are the 2 projects we'll be undertaking. The last one with partnership with Metro.
Excellent.
What is the rapid assessment process you normally entail? Is that aerial photography or?
No, they'll be on the stream and so forth. They'll include looking at fish habitat on the stream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Will this
Seeing the presence of species and so forth in the process, but also looking at the stream beds and so forth. We know that certain of them have great spawning opportunities and so forth. Others don't.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about upper, I'll just add on to this. A couple years ago, one of the employees of the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife came to our meetings, became very interested in the Monopole Dam on the fish ladder that they have on it. And he went ahead and made modifications on it, not expensive ones, but part of it was velocity of the water coming through the system to attract fish. And so he cut notches into every one of those so that the water will spill through a narrower area and attract the fish better. And he was seeing coho come up there after he's done that
Wow,
work.
good.
So part of that upper watershed assessment is see, the habitat above it. And,
So is this work with Metro in partnership you guys are doing, is this on the ground work too, or what is it?
yeah, well,
After
we'll be,
assessment?
we'll be, we'll be hiring people to do it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Good.
we'll be contracting that out.
Well, as a segue to that, the Environmental Learning Center at Clackamas Community College is having their second of their professional development workshops coming up. And this is a stream health workshop that is a 2-day event. It costs a couple $100 for, unless you're a student, and it's like 50. But it's real hands-on, and it's, guest speakers and, field work and that sort of thing to learn some of the basic techniques for stream survey and stream health assessment.
What dates are this?
It's August 6th and 7th. So,
When is it?
August 6th and 7th.
Oh,
yeah, so we're trying to drum up business for that one. It's the second of several that Doug and I and others have been helping put together.
And I'll be taking that one.
You're gonna take it? Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I would if I was around, but I won't be around.
If you guys want to send me info on that, we can put it on the events calendar on the city website.
Okay.
I'll forward it to you right now.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's on the ELC's Facebook. I got the email from the environmental owners, and I can go ahead and forward that to you all if you
That'd
want.
be great,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
They'd have more information.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? Or I guess we have future agenda items. Sorry.
Well, so do folks want to meet in August? I'm not sure that we have a whole lot going for the next agenda, but if we do, it'll be contingent on whether or not we can get a presentation from John Runyon, but that doesn't necessarily have to be this August. It's kind of a busy time of year for,
I won't be here,
yeah,
so I'm definitely.
you're not going to be here.
I would suggest the NCAT presentation that I participated, well, the lady did it for
Who was it?
Denise McGriff and myself, National Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, does a really good job explaining basic things and tying it back to integrated pest management. I think we should hear it. This is my take on it sometime in the future.
Okay,
She does a really good job.
all right.
Denise could tell you who it was. I don't remember the name now, but,
Okay.
or maybe you do. You know the name?
What I could come back with, if folks want to meet in August, is a set of social media topic. I guess what we call those is flashes or bursts or blurbs or whatever you want to call them. See, I'm so savvy with this stuff.
Pretty good.
Tweets? I don't know. Related to these issues that are on our work plan. Write some things up and have you look at them. But we could also do that via email. So I'll leave it open.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? And this meeting is adjourned.
All right.